Hello guys, it's me Simo Urahara, and in this video we'll talk about Ichibei Hyosube and why he is the most dangerous Shinigami in the story. What are his real motives? Because Ichibei Hyosube, this character, with his appearance radically changed the features of the story, and in many ways. Because before the emergence of the Zero Squad or the novels that gave us additional scenes about Ichibei in the reality of BLEACH universe, the story was centered in its apparent form around that Aizen Sasuke represents evil and a rebellious character who wants to change the world system and kill thousands of lives for that. And Ichigo, along with the Shinigamis, wanted to prevent him from doing so, and they represented the good side, so to speak. However, what Ichigo was fighting for wasn't the same that Gotei 13 was fighting for. Rather, inside the Gotei 13, not everyone was fighting for the same purpose. For example, if you ask Ichigo, why do you want to fight Aizen Sasuke? He will give you several answers. That he wants to protect his loved ones and he may want to become stronger. But his answer will not go beyond those frames. If you ask Zaraki the same question, he will answer that he loves battles and fights. But whether Ichigo, whether Zaraki, whether a Shinigami or a character with a superficial thinking, they are in the end fighting for a trend they don't know anything about. And very few knew these facts. If we will talk about those who knew some of the truth, it can be said that they are Yamamoto and Urahara Kisuke. They are the only two characters who have spoken about this issue. Yamamoto said that Ryu is the symbol of the Soul Society and that Aizen wants to break into the Royal Palace and kill Ryu. Therefore, he cannot be allowed to do this. Urahara Kisuke was also a supporter of this idea, considering that Ryu is the backbone of the worlds, and his death meant the demise of those worlds. But after the novel was published, part of Ryu's past appeared, and that he was a victim of nobles, and how they used his power to divide the original world, which was considered a great sin, and how the nobles committed a lot of crimes against Ryu in the past. Therefore, it turns out that the current system in the Soul Society is based on a big sin. However, Yamamoto, Urahara Kisuke, Kyorako Shinsui, who seems to know this hidden truth, or Byakuya Kuchiki, Yurichi Shohin, who are descendants of the nobles who committed that sin, and I mean here the ancestors, none of them bear responsibility for what happened in the past. That is, some of them may agree with Aizen Sasuke or even Yūhaba on the issue that what happened in the past was wrong. Whatever happened. They were born in a different time, and they found that system spread its roots for hundreds of thousands of years. So they cannot sacrifice the entire worlds for the sake of one person, or to restore an old system that also had its own shortcomings. So, for example, Urahara Kisuke, among the things he was thinking of is how to rid Ryu of his suffering by inventing the Hogyoku, so that the Shinigamis would be able to make the world exist without the need for a single person to bear all that burden. Thus, the worlds will not be destroyed, because he knows what happened to Ryu was not something good. So here the question arises, why didn't Ichibei think of such solution? Rather, the strange thing here, how Ichibei agreed to all those things, which, unlike others, he was present in. I don't say he witnessed the matter in front of his eyes, but he was at the time when those events took place. It's not like Yamamoto, who heard about Ryu and what happened to him, or what he represents, or Urahara Kisuke or Aizen, who read about it. Rather, Ichibei was in the period in which Ryu was present, even before the worlds were divided. He saw who Ryu was, he watched him in his real body before he was sealed, and he watched the ancestors of the noble families and said that they had powerful abilities. Even in Ichibei's words about the story of Ryu and the ancestors, he was talking as if he had no role at all. He was just talking about Ryu, who didn't resist or object to the wishes of the ancestors, and that the ancestors cut up Ryu and made him the center of the world. And you, Ichibei, didn't you have an opinion? On what basis were you originally appointed as Ryu's servant? Because it doesn't make sense that someone as powerful as Ichibei would have his role in all these events just an observer. That's why I say that the opposite of Yamamoto, Kisuke or Aizen, if Ichibei was really against what the ancestor wanted, would have done something as long as he was present at that period. But he agreed to the actions of the ancestors and acknowledged that corrupt system that sets Ryu as stone foundation of the worlds. Because there is something strange about the story that Ichibei told us about Ryu and the ancestors. The ancestors of the noble family saw things in the original world and they didn't like it. So they decided to create a new world with a new cycle life. Until here, everything is good. But is it possible that the ancestor will form a world in which they will die? I don't mean that everyone will not die in that world, but I mean the ancestors themselves. And I don't think that a person who exists in a world in which there is no concept of death will want to form a new world with death so that he himself dies in it. Unless he wanted a new world in which the rest of the living creatures would enter a life cycle with death except for them. In a sense, I think that the ancestors took into account that the new world would enable them to obtain many privileges. Among them is a strong authority over the world of the society and the world of living, and they will put Ryo in the cocoon and be the basis of the worlds. Therefore, for several reasons like the one I just mentioned, and also as well as to provide them with the power of immortality and remain alive. And so where they can achieve this point of immortality, it's in the Royal Palace. Yes, we all know that the members of Zero Squad will all enjoy immortality because of their presence in the Royal Palace. So that according to the words of the monk himself, by using the power of Ryo, they transform their bones into oaken, and thus they have many privileges, the most important of which is immortality. And so a simple question, why didn't the ancestors who created Ryo in the way we saw think about these things that keeps them alive, unless Ichibei somehow intervened and got rid of the ancestors in order to finally get all those privileges? Do you get my point, guys? Where are the ancestors? How did they die? Why Ichibei is the only one left alive and the rest are all dead? Therefore, if you look at the matter from several angles, you will find that Ichibei is the only beneficiary of the idea of Ryo remaining as the backbone of the worlds, because he will continue to enjoy his immortality and he doesn't care about what will happen below. And he stated this even in the anime, in the new episode, and also in the novel. He said that he doesn't care if the regime changed. The most important is that Ryo remains the center of the worlds. For all of this, because Ichibei is history himself, saw all of these things and he didn't do anything. And he was present at the time, unlike Urahara Kisuke who wanted to make a solution. Because there is no doubt that Ichibei put in his mind that Ryo could be killed. So what will happen to the worlds then? Or rather, what will happen to the Royal Palace that provides Ichibei all those privileges of immortality? That's why he thought about a new person to become Ryo. And that's why he started to think about Ichigo Kurosaki. The strange thing here is that there is a line in the novel that caught my attention, and that is how Ichibei tells Nimaya that he admires Kyoraku Shunsui, the current leader of the Gotei 13. So does that mean that he didn't like Yamamoto? I think so, because at the beginning of the first episode of the second part, Ichibei made fun of Yamamoto because Ichibei's words are the same as Yuaba that said to Yamamoto how for 1,000 years they have become weak. But why would Ichibei hate Yamamoto and admires Kyoraku? I think simply because Yamamoto would never have allowed Ichibei to replace Ryo with Ichigo. We saw how Yamamoto preferred to sacrifice himself and his captain rather than make Ichigo enter into a battle he was not obligated to. He even helped Ichigo regain his Shinigami powers. So Yamamoto wouldn't let Ichigo take Ryo's place. While Kyoraku is the opposite. Kyoraku had already predicted that Ichibei would follow this path, which was to make Ichigo a substitute for the Soul King. That's why he described Ichibei as cunning, and he decided to go to Ichigo's friends because he expected a scenario where Ichigo might have made Ichigo a replacement for Ryo in the case of his death. So why exactly Ichigo? Simply because he is a descendant of Shiba's family, or Shiba's ancestor, and Shiba's ancestor himself had the intention of taking Ryo's place. And Ichibei maybe saw this or heard about because he was present at the time. So for all of this, Ichibei chose Ryo because he knew that by putting some pressure on Ichigo, he would accept. And by the way, I think that Ichibei doesn't care about the survivor of the former Ryo because he will simply put the name Ryo on Ichigo, and thus he will bear all the characteristics of Ryo. Thus, Ichibei will ensure that the continuation of the Royal Palace and the continuation of the world as well. And as I said, he will remain the biggest beneficiary. And when we talk about putting a new name for Ichigo, which is Ryo, This automatically means neutralizing his personality and killing him. And perhaps this is what Kurako meant in the novel when he said to Ichibei, "You were planning to kill Ichigo?" So guys, what do you think about the plans of Ichibei? What do you think about his characters? Tell me all your thoughts about him and see you guys in my next video.